Greetings, fellow explorer of the YouTube realms. Tell me, from which epic land do you hail? Whether it's a sleepy town or a skyscraper jungle, I want to know. Leave a comment, toss this video to your people, and let's get rolling. Daniel Carter stared at his phone's display, watching the silent loop of a video where his wife leaned in close, laughing at something whispered by a man who clearly wasn't her husband. The timestamp marked it as recorded earlier that afternoon, just 3 hours ago. According to the GPS app on her phone, she was supposed to be at work. But that clearly wasn't the case. The surveillance footage from the motel's parking lot said otherwise, undeniably so. So did the line items on her credit card. The same cheap motel every Tuesday for half a year. Daniel's hands trembled as he scrolled through the meticulously organized evidence. Screenshots, itemized receipts, saved video clips, each one another quiet confirmation that the woman he'd loved for 15 years was living a lie. "Home a little early, aren't you?" Mila called from the kitchen, her voice all sugar and warmth, laced with something sharper underneath. She entered the living room, wearing the sleek anniversary dress she once claimed was too tight to wear out in public. "Traffic was easy today," Daniel said, tucking his phone into his back pocket with practiced ease. The scent from the kitchen drifted in, familiar and rich. "I made your favorite," she said brightly. "Pot roast." She kissed his cheek, the perfume on her skin noticeably different, richer, muskier, far from the usual drugstore scent she wore each morning. "My sister's coming for dinner. Jared, too." Jared, the same Jared from the surveillance video. "Great," Daniel replied with a tight smile. "I'll freshen up." In the bathroom, he paused before the mirror and studied his own reflection. 40 years old, hair beginning to gray at the edges, carrying a bit more weight than he used to, long nights, take-out dinners, and silent stress had taken their toll. When exactly had he become a background character in his own life? The doorbell rang. Voices soon filled the house. Lisa, Mila's sister, was already launching into complaints about her job before she even took off her coat. Jared's boisterous laugh echoed through the hallway like a wrecking ball. Then came Daniel's parents, his mother balancing a store-bought pie she'd later claim was homemade. "There he is," his father greeted with a cheerful clap on the shoulder that made Daniel flinch. "Still burning the candle at both ends, huh?" "Someone has to," Daniel muttered. Jared handed him a beer, cold from the fridge. Daniel took it, noting how carefully the man avoided his gaze. Was it shame or just bold indifference? The conversation around the dinner table flowed effortlessly, almost like he wasn't even present. Mila leaned a bit too closely toward Jared, laughing too loudly at his stories, her hand grazing his arm with a familiarity Daniel could no longer ignore. Lisa cut into her portion while complaining about her mortgage, enjoying a meal funded by Daniel's exhausting overtime hours. His mother had plenty to say about the seasoning, none of it complimentary, and none of it accompanied by anything she'd cooked herself. "Danny's been working pretty late these days," Mila announced with a deliberate smile, slicing her roast with careful precision. "Haven't you, love?" "Electricians don't get off at 5, he replied, meeting her gaze squarely. He saw it, the stiffness at the corners of her eyes, the subtle, nervous twist of her wedding ring. She was lying, again. "Bet all that OT's stacking up," Jared added. "Thinking about upgrading the truck?" "Maybe." Daniel had been setting money aside for a surprise vacation, Hawaii, the dream destination Mila always talked about. Now he wasn't sure who the trip was really meant for anymore. After dinner, the women headed to the kitchen to clean up. Daniel slipped out to the back porch, letting the evening air cool his face and clear his thoughts. Through the kitchen window, he saw them huddled together, whispering and giggling like high school girls at a sleepover. His phone buzzed. A message from a number he didn't recognize. "Check your email. You deserve to know." He opened his inbox. There, waiting for him, was a thread of screenshots from a group chat titled "Poor Danny." The messages dated back months. Mila, Lisa, their cousin Amy. They'd been trading details, graphic ones, about the affair. Laughing at his expense, comparing notes, mocking his cluelessness, scoring his performance in the bedroom like a bad sitcom character. He still thinks I'm stuck at the office. Does he still do that weird thing with his tongue? God, yes. I fake everything now. Jared actually knows what he's doing. Daniel dropped the phone. It hit the porch with a crack, screen facing the sky. 15 years of marriage, obliterated by jokes shared in a private chat among women he once trusted like blood. "You okay out there?" his father called from inside. "Yeah," Daniel answered, though his voice came out flat and hollow. He bent down, retrieved the phone, and scrolled back through the group chat, forcing himself to read every word. His eyes burned. And the footage from the bedroom camera he'd hidden weeks ago? That filled in the rest. Mila and Jared were still catching their breath, giggling as they joked that Daniel's paycheck was essentially sponsoring their weekly rendezvous. They laughed about his predictable mornings, how pitiful he looked heading off to work, never suspecting that he was the one footing the bill for their deception. In their eyes, what real threat could a quiet, soft-spoken electrician pose? Daniel closed his eyes, something icy and methodical beginning to form inside him. A plan was taking shape, calculated and orderly, clicking into place like a blueprint for a control panel. Step 1. Secure the core structure. Step 2. Begin removing any component that no longer served the system. He walked calmly back into the living room, his expression composed and unbothered. "Coffee, anyone?" he asked, voice light, as if the world hadn't just shifted under his feet. The next morning, Daniel did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He called off work. Instead of grabbing his toolbox, he drove into the city and walked into the office of Patricia Graves, a divorce attorney known for her bold tagline on a billboard, "Protecting what's yours, no compromises." "Mr. Carter," she said, greeting him. Patricia was in her early 50s, with eyes that missed nothing, someone who had sat across from every variety of betrayal a marriage could offer. "What can I do for you?" she asked. Daniel said nothing. He simply placed a flash drive on the edge of her desk. "My wife's been cheating on me, with her brother-in-law," he said calmly. "I've gathered evidence. I need to know where I stand legally." She plugged in the drive and skimmed through the contents: hotel receipts, compromising photos, message threads that left little room for doubt. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, her voice neutral. "At least 6 months, that's what I can prove. Could be longer." His voice didn't waver. The hurt had long since solidified into focus. "We're both on the house title," he added, "but my parents' names are on the deed too. They were added during a refinancing deal." Patricia leaned back in her chair, casually crossing her legs. "That could influence the property division," she said. "Any kids?" "No, we tried. Doctor said I was the problem," he said softly. But now he had doubts. He was almost certain she'd been secretly using contraceptives the whole time. "Any shared ventures? Other debts outside the house?" she continued. "The home's the only big asset," Daniel replied. "We have a couple of shared credit cards, but I pay those down. Her car loan runs through my credit union." He'd spent countless nights reviewing every financial detail, line by line, transaction by transaction. "I make twice her income," he said. "If we split, she might ask for spousal support, right?" "It's possible," Patricia acknowledged. "Unless we can argue that her infidelity directly harmed the financial stability of the marriage." A knowing smirk curved on her lips. "You mentioned your parents are on the deed?" "Yes. They pitched in $20,000 when we bought it, 8 years back." "Have they contributed since then? Mortgage, taxes, anything like that?" "No," Daniel said. "I've handled everything. Mortgage, insurance, property taxes, every last bill." Patricia jotted some notes on her legal pad. "Here's what I suggest," she said. "We move forward with a divorce citing infidelity. We compile a financial case showing you've been the sole provider while she's been lying. That weakens her right to ask for support." "And the house?" Daniel asked. "That's where it gets strategic," she said, lightly tapping her pen. "If your parents want to reclaim their original contribution, they can push for a forced sale. The court would divide proceeds based on who paid what. But they'd have to be on board with that?" "Yes, their consent would be crucial." Daniel thought back to their last dinner together, his mom's passive-aggressive comments, His dad's silence after hearing about Daniel's sacrifices. "They might agree to it," he said after a pause. "I'll begin drafting the documents," Patricia replied. "In the meantime, start pulling together anything you can. Bank statements, bills, transaction history. Build a paper trail that proves you've kept this home running." "How long could all this take?" Daniel asked. "If she contests it, maybe a few months," Patricia said. "But if she wants to avoid public humiliation—" She gave a casual shrug. "It could be over in weeks." As Daniel stepped outside her office and into the warm afternoon light, something inside him eased. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he could breathe. For the first time since uncovering her betrayal, Daniel felt something he hadn't in weeks: direction. A sense of control returned. That evening, he bypassed his regular stop at the electrical supply warehouse and instead wandered into a different section of the hardware store. He purchased a discreet audio recorder, the kind favored by investigators. He also added a few surveillance tools and a prepaid burner phone, chosen specifically because it couldn't be linked back to him. When he arrived home, Mila was bustling in the kitchen, putting on a performance, too cheerful, too eager, the way guilty people often tried to overcompensate. "You're starting to look more rested," she said, brushing his cheek with a kiss. "I took a day off," Daniel responded. "First time in years." He watched her closely. "Thinking I might take more time off. Spend it with you." A flicker passed through her eyes. "Concern? That would be nice," she said, her tone measured. "Just don't fall behind too much at work." "I'm pretty sure the electrical grid won't collapse without me," he said with a wry smile. He slid his arms around her, drawing her close, but her body stiffened. She didn't melt into the hug the way she used to. "When was the last time we went anywhere together, just us?" Work's been really demanding lately. The Patterson project's a lot." "Ah, the Patterson account," he said evenly. Daniel had already called her office the day before. There was no Patterson file, no such project. "Maybe we can plan something next month," she offered. Later that night, while she was in the shower, Daniel powered on her laptop. She hadn't updated a single password. Everyone's still tied to memories they once cherished. Their wedding date, their anniversary, the name of their first dog. She had never been great at cybersecurity. Evidently, that hadn't changed. Everything was there, brutal, undeniable. Photos, recordings, travel itineraries. Mila hadn't just cheated. She'd been living an alternate reality with Jared, all while maintaining a false front of being a devoted wife. One video was tagged with a date, the night of Daniel's birthday. She had told him she was working late. She hadn't been. But the most damning material was in her private chats with Lisa and Amy. Thread after thread, discussing how to slowly bleed their joint savings dry. Conversations about his life insurance policy. Casual plans to hold the charade until she had enough set aside to leave. "He's clueless," Mila had typed. "By the time he realizes, I'll have a safety net and Jay will be all I need." Lisa had asked, "What if he starts noticing things?" Mila's reply chilled him. "Please, Danny believes anything I say. He never questions me." Daniel copied everything, every file, every message, to an encrypted external drive. It wasn't just about divorce evidence. It was ignition. This wasn't just infidelity. They were plotting to destroy him, financially, emotionally, completely. The next morning, Daniel made the short drive to his parents' house. They lived about 20 minutes away in a modest ranch-style home where people still talked over fences and gossip traveled faster than mail. His mother opened the door in a faded bathrobe, a cigarette dangling from her fingers. "Danny? What are you doing here this early?" she asked, brows knitting. "I need to talk to you and Dad," he said quietly. "It's serious." His father sat at the kitchen table reading yesterday's paper, sipping coffee from a chipped mug that read, "World's Greatest Electrician," a gag gift from Daniel, though the man had worked in a factory, not on power lines. "Coffee?" his dad offered. "Sure." As Daniel accepted the cup, he noticed the quick glance his parents exchanged. That familiar silent signal they always used when preparing to judge something as a team. "I'm getting divorced," he said flatly. His mother's cigarette slipped from her fingers and landed with a hiss in her mug. "What? Why?" she gasped. "Mila always seemed so nice." "She's been having an affair with Jared," he said. It's been going on for months, maybe longer. Daniel's voice didn't rise. It was steady, restrained. Are you absolutely sure? His father asked, voice low and skeptical. These situations can be deceiving, he added. Marriage is tough. You don't walk away the second things get hard. She's been laughing at me behind my back, plotting with her family to clean out our bank accounts, and she has no intention of ending the affair. Daniel held up his phone and turned it toward his parents, scrolling through a collection of group chat screenshots. This is what they say when we're not around. His mother's eyes moved over the messages, her face gradually draining of color. The comments aimed at Daniel were cruel enough, but what truly crushed her were the venomous remarks about her and her husband. Mila had insulted them outright, calling them ancient busybodies who didn't know how to mind their own affairs. She ridiculed his mother's cooking and scoffed at his father's war stories, stories from a war he'd never actually served in. That little, his father muttered, fists clenched tight against his thighs. There's more, Daniel added quietly. He swiped to another section, screenshots from a financial chat thread. Cold, strategic, calculated, Mila had laid out a blueprint for draining every possible dollar from the divorce. She knows the deed lists both your names, Daniel explained. She's counting on that equity boost to get herself a bigger payout. His mother's voice was nearly a whisper. We gave $20,000 toward that house. We trusted her. I remember, Daniel said. And I've handled the mortgage alone for nearly 10 years now. But from a legal standpoint, she could still have a claim. He leaned in slightly, his voice firm but measured. Unless we fight back. If you want to protect your investment, now's the time. His father's voice shifted, no longer hurt, but sharpened, businesslike. What are you saying? My lawyer says you can file for reimbursement, plus interest. That would legally require the house to be sold, and when that happens, the money gets split based on who actually paid, not on what the court assumes is fair. His mother's eyes lit up with realization. She'd walk away with next to nothing. She'd leave with exactly what she put in, Daniel said, which is nothing at all. He looked between them, letting the silence sit. But we need to be on the same page. Because once this starts, it gets ugly. It gets personal. His parents exchanged a look, quiet, knowing, shaped by years of shared understanding. Then his father gave a single, deliberate nod. She took us all for idiots. Let's see how much that costs her. Over the following days, Daniel moved with meticulous care. He opened a new bank account and redirected his salary before Mila could catch wind. Then, one by one, he reset all the passwords on their shared accounts, cutting off her access entirely. He compiled every receipt, mortgage payments, utilities, maintenance costs, everything tied to their joint life, but paid from his hand. A complete record, one she couldn't challenge. What strained him wasn't the logistics, it was the act. Pretending, smiling across the breakfast table, kissing her on the way out the door, nodding as she spun stories about late meetings, all while pretending he didn't know she was lying. But each lie now worked in his favor. Each one would be another brick in the legal wall he was building. Friday night arrived, and so did Jared. Daniel was ready. Hey there, brother-in-law, Jared greeted him with that smug grin, offering a handshake full of false charm, the kind of grip that said, I think I've won. How's life in the wire-pulling business? Jared asked. Shocking, Daniel replied with a faint smirk. And construction? Can't complain, Jared said, cracking open a beer like he owned the place. Crew's good. Pays steady. He didn't ask, just grabbed the beer from Daniel's fridge. Mila says you've been working overtime lately. Daniel gestured toward the room. Someone's got to keep the lights on. Houses like this don't pay for themselves. Fair point, Jared nodded. You've built a nice setup here. Daniel's smile barely held. Built's the important word. Something in his tone made Jared pause. Well, Jared said cautiously, you and Mila both contributed, yeah? Did we? Daniel asked, casually opening his laptop on the counter and turning it toward him. Because from where I'm standing, Daniel continued, tapping the spreadsheet, her contributions seem invisible. The screen was filled with rows and rows of numbers. Payments for the mortgage, taxes, maintenance, all tied to Daniel's name. Jared backed away slightly, heading for the living room. Look, man, that's between you two. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. Is it? It's strange, isn't it? Daniel remarked, closing the laptop with a sharp snap. Lately, it seems like everyone but me has had a say in my marriage. He raised his eyes. And just so we're clear, none of those people happen to be married to Mila. Jared's mouth twitched. I have no idea what you're talking about. Daniel took a step forward, his voice dropping low. The Moonlight Motel. On Elm Tuesdays. Room 237. Ring any bells? Jared went pale. Danny, hold on, I can explain. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Oh, really? You're going to explain why my wife's brother-in-law has been screwing her in a motel I unknowingly paid for by pulling overtime? He wasn't finished. What about the group messages? The ones where you all took turns making jokes about what a pathetic husband I am. Jared fumbled for words. It's not what you think. It wasn't supposed to. Let me guess. Daniel cut in, voice sharp as glass. It just happened? Week after week for half a year? His tone turned icier. You expect me to believe you tripped into her bed by accident, repeatedly, while I was out busting my back to pay for the room you used? Danny, come on, Jared pleaded. Let me explain. You can explain it to my attorney, Daniel shot back, and to your wife when she gets the full story. And maybe your boss, once the photos are out there. He pulled out his phone and held it up like a gavel, because that's what comes next. Time for the world to meet the real Jared Thompson. No, Jared gasped. Please. I'm begging you. My kids. Think of them. They'll come to terms with who their father really is, Daniel said coldly. The same way I had to learn the truth about the woman I married. He turned toward the kitchen, his voice a slab of ice. Now get the hell out of my house. This is insane, Daniel, Jared said, still trying to salvage something. You're overreacting. Mila --. Mila's probably still at her sister's place, mapping out the next phase with you, Daniel replied, cutting him off. But that won't change anything. He opened the front door wide. This is done. You just haven't figured it out yet. Jared didn't argue further. He walked out. Daniel locked the door, poured himself a drink, and let the silence settle around him like armor. The first move had been played. The real battle was just beginning. 2 hours later, Mila burst through the door, frantic and red-faced. What did you say to Jared? She demanded. He called me crying, going on about lawyers and pictures. What the hell is happening? Daniel, seated in an armchair, didn't flinch. A stack of divorce papers sat beside him on the table. I told him the truth, he said quietly. And now I'm telling you the same. It's over. Over? She echoed, voice shaking. Danny, you're scaring me. This marriage is finished, he said. The affair, the deceit, it ends here. He gestured toward the documents. Sign. She stared at the paperwork like it might bite her. Is this about Jared? Danny, nothing happened. We're just friends. Room 237, Daniel replied flatly. Tuesdays. I've got the receipts for 6 months. He didn't stop. Photos, videos, texts of you and your sister mocking me behind my back. You've been spying on me? She shot back. I've been protecting myself, he said evenly, which was clearly necessary, given you and your sister were plotting to empty our accounts. He stood and scrawled his signature on the paperwork. Not going to let that happen. You can't just throw me out, Mila snapped. This is my house too. You're having a breakdown or something. Daniel gave her a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Actually, I can. My parents are reclaiming their investment, $20,000, plus interest for 8 years. She blinked, stunned. They can't do that. They already have, he said. The house is going on the market Monday. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. You've got until then to decide, sign the papers and leave with some dignity, or drag this into court and watch every one of your decisions get dissected in public. She called after him, voice cracking. Where are you going? A motel, he said. It seemed appropriate. He paused at the threshold, glanced back once, and added, "Oh, and I canceled the cards." He had already locked her out of the bank accounts, new passwords, new recovery emails. If she wanted money, she'd have to turn to the man she cheated with. When he handed her the finalized divorce documents, he didn't wait around for protests or tears. He walked out, leaving her standing stunned in their living room, only now beginning to feel the full weight of what her betrayal had cost her. The Moonlight Motel wasn't as seedy as Daniel had imagined. Clean, quiet, budget-friendly, and the man at the front desk didn't ask for identification or small talk. Daniel paid for a week in cash and checked in with no intention of being found. He didn't have to wait long. By Monday morning, a bright red for sale sign appeared on their front lawn. Not long after, his phone began lighting up with missed calls, Mila first, then her sister, then her mother. He ignored them all. On Tuesday, Mila tracked him down. She showed up outside the motel, looking like she hadn't slept. Her hair unwashed, yesterday's mascara smeared down her cheeks, and the same clothes she'd worn the day before. The arrogance she used to wear like armor had crumbled. "Danny, please," she said, voice cracking. "We need to talk." He didn't flinch. "Oh, now we need to talk?" "This is insane," she pleaded. "You're going to throw everything away over one mistake?" He narrowed his eyes. "One mistake? You're calling 6 months of lies and manipulation a mistake? Stealing from our joint account, scheming with your boyfriend? That's not an error, that's a plan. Laughing at me behind my back with your family? That's just plain cruelty." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "But sure, tell me again how I'm the bad guy." "I know I hurt you," she said quietly. "It was an awful decision. But people make mistakes. That doesn't mean we can't fix this." "Fix what exactly?" he said, eyes hard. "The footage of you and Jared in our bed? The messages where you call me a joke to your sister? Some things don't get repaired. Some things break and stay broken." "I still love you," she whispered. He shook his head. "No. You love the roof I kept over your head. You love the quiet life I built with my own hands. You love having a punching bag your friends could laugh at." He turned toward the room. "But you never loved me." "That's not true," she sobbed. "It didn't mean anything. It was just sex." Daniel's voice was calm but razor sharp. "That's exactly what makes it worse. If it meant nothing, then you threw away everything for nothing. You stopped being my wife the moment you decided I wasn't enough." That was when she lost it. The sobs came hard and loud, raw and disheveled. Once upon a time, they might have moved him. Now they felt like another performance. "Don't do this," she cried. "I'll cut Jared off. I'll do anything you want." "You know what I want?" he said. "Sign the divorce." "The house is worth $200,000, she snapped. "You don't get to keep all of it." He raised an eyebrow. "Watch me." Then he closed the door. By Thursday, 3 buyers had made offers. He accepted the top bid, a cash deal from a developer planning to raze the property and replace it with high-end condos. Something about that felt right. On Friday, she tried a new move. This time, she didn't come alone. She brought reinforcements, Lisa and Amy, 2 of the same women who used to smirk at his expense during family dinners. Lisa spoke first. "Danny, look. Yeah, Mila messed up. But this?" She gestured around the parking lot. "This is over the top." "You're being mean." "Mean?" Daniel said, his voice low. He let the word settle. "So that's what justice is called these days? You're blowing up her whole life over one fling." "I'm saving mine from scammers," he replied coldly. He turned his gaze on Amy. "You got a kick out of those group messages, didn't you? All that talk about me being a broke loser?" Amy looked down at her shoes. "We didn't mean anything by it. Just girl talk. You know?" Daniel pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. "Oh, I know. Want to hear Mila explaining how she planned to bleed me dry in court? Or the part where she calls my mom a crusty hag?" "That's enough," Mila hissed, stepping in front of her friends. "Is it?" Daniel said, cocking his head. "Because you all seem to think this is still up for discussion." Daniel faced the trio of women with measured composure, his tone unyielding. "Let's keep this straightforward. The marriage is over. The house has been sold. Mila walks away with nothing but the clothes on her back and whatever Jared feels like providing. Lisa stepped forward, visibly shaken. You can't just toss her aside with nothing to her name. I can, Daniel responded icily, and I fully intend to. If any of you interfere, I'll make sure the entire community knows exactly what kind of people you've shown yourselves to be. He gave them a thin, hard smile, devoid of any kindness. Please, try me. Silence followed. No one challenged him. They quietly turned and left. The closing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. After settling the mortgage and reimbursing his parents' investment, Daniel would pocket $180,000. Mila, who had stubbornly refused to sign the divorce settlement, would receive no share, not a dime. That Saturday evening, Jared made one final reckless attempt. Daniel had just exited a roadside diner when Jared stepped from the shadows, flanked by 3 burly men, clearly laborers, built like men accustomed to heavy work. Time we finish this like men, Jared growled. 4 on 1, how noble, Daniel said dryly. He kept his hands open and visible, calm and unfazed. He'd been anticipating something like this. You've ruined me, Jared spat. My wife's gone. My kids won't even look at me. Daniel's voice was cool. You did that to yourself. I just held up the mirror. I loved her, Jared muttered bitterly. And she used you, the same way she used me. The only difference is, I've stopped letting it happen. At Jared's signal, the 3 men began closing in. Without flinching, Daniel pulled out his phone and pressed a button. I'd rethink that, he said evenly. What the hell is this? Jared barked. You've been under watch since Tuesday. Threatening someone involved in a legal proceeding? That's not just stupid, it's illegal. Look across the street, Daniel added, nodding toward an unassuming sedan. You're being watched. Jared turned to see the outline of 2 individuals inside the unmarked car. His shoulders sagged as the realization hit. This isn't over, he muttered, his voice edged with bitterness. Daniel stepped away. It is now. Go home, Jared. Or to whatever's left of it. The closing went off without incident. Daniel finalized the documents, collected his cashier's check, and handed over the keys to what was no longer his home, but a shell of a life he'd left behind. Mila didn't appear at the signing. Her attorney claimed she'd been hospitalized, citing stress-related chest pains. Daniel felt nothing. He drove his truck out to the cemetery, parking beside his grandfather's grave, the man who had once taught him how to wire a house, live with honor, and earn every dollar with dignity. Standing quietly at the granite marker, he spoke low. I don't know if you'd approve of how I handled any of this, Grandpa, he said, but I'm not who I was. I barely recognize the man I've become. Maybe that's just what it takes to make it through. Maybe being the good guy means you always finish last. A soft gust passed through the oaks, his grandfather's favorite trees. Daniel took it as a quiet acknowledgement. Leaving the cemetery behind, he drove to his new apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't large, but it was tidy and his. A clean slate, the beginning of something new. 3 weeks slipped by. Then the phone rang. Mr. Carter? This is Janet Morrison, came the voice on the line. I think you may have dialed the wrong number, Mrs. Morrison, Daniel replied. You help women like me, don't you? She asked, her voice low, edged with worry. Women whose husbands think we're too blind to see what's happening? Daniel sat upright, his eyes drifting to the simple white business cards resting on the table. Just a name and a number. In a town like this, that was enough. What makes you think your husband's being unfaithful? He asked. He's been working late, dressing better, guarding his phone like it's classified, she said quietly. The steadiness in her voice couldn't hide the hurt beneath. He thinks I'm too stupid to catch on, she continued. But I know something's wrong. I can feel it. She paused for a moment before adding, and I need to know what he's hiding. I want nothing hidden, she said, her voice trembling, and I want him to pay, completely. Daniel's mouth twitched into a quiet smirk, that old familiar fire beginning to flicker in his chest again. The craving for balance, for retribution, for ensuring that betrayal had a cost, had become his steady companion. "Mrs. Morrison," he said with a measured calm, "I think we can make that happen." Half a year later, Daniel Carter was the discreet force behind a thriving under-the-radar advisory service. His clientele? Betrayed spouses. Those hunting for truth, leverage, and revenge strategies that stayed comfortably within the boundaries of legality. He provided tools, surveillance, asset protection, and carefully orchestrated consequences. His name was never printed on flyers. Instead, it passed between hushed voices at wine tastings, over coffee in support circles, or between cautious friends at yoga studios. He never ran into Mila again. Word was, she and Jared had packed up and left the state. Jared had lost his job on a crew and been effectively disowned by his relatives. Daniel's parents still dropped by from time to time. They admired the son he had become, even if the world he now inhabited was foreign to them. His office was housed in a repurposed industrial building downtown, clean, functional, emotionless. No wedding photos, no trophies, no family souvenirs. Just drawers full of broken promises and a desk where Daniel designed customized vengeance with surgical accuracy. On a still Tuesday afternoon, a knock echoed off the glass-paneled door. Daniel looked up from a document tracing illicit transfers to offshore accounts. Through the frosted glass, a familiar silhouette took shape. Lisa, Mila's older sister. He rose, opened the door slowly, and let the silence hang. This was the same woman who'd once joked about his misery in a group chat filled with mocking comments. "Lisa, Danny," she said quietly, I need your help." She looked drained, not from age, but from carrying something she couldn't put down. Her once polished blouse was wrinkled. The makeup on her face was done with precision, but fatigue clung to every feature. "What kind of help are we talking about?" he asked flatly. "My husband," she muttered, eyes darting away. "I think he's seeing someone else." Daniel almost laughed aloud. The symmetry was brutal, but he kept his face still. "Come in." She stepped cautiously into the room, lowering herself into the same worn leather chair where dozens before her had come to confess, plead, and plan. Her fingers clutched the strap of her purse, shifting it nervously. She barely looked up. "How long have you had doubts?" he asked. 3 months, maybe longer. He's been distant, different, secretive. Finally, she met his gaze. "I know you probably hate me. After what happened, I wouldn't blame you. But I don't know where else to go." His voice was even. "What makes you think I hate you?" She hesitated. "Because of how we treated you. What I said. What we all said." Her tone cracked. "I was awful. We all were." "You were," Daniel replied. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know it won't undo anything. But I need you to hear that." He leaned back in his chair, studying her, this woman who once laughed behind his back while his world fell apart. "All right," he said, "tell me what's changed." For the next hour, Lisa outlined every classic signal of infidelity. Excuses for late nights, a sudden focus on fitness and wardrobe, new passwords, distant eyes, routine deviations, one red flag after another. Daniel took notes, kept his questions pointed, and began mapping out a case in his mind. Eventually, he set the pen down. "I can work with this," he said, "but you need to be absolutely sure you want to go down this path." She nodded quickly. "If he's cheating, I'll uncover it. If he's hiding assets, I'll find them. If he's plotting an exit, I'll know before he makes the first move." Lisa exhaled hard. "And then?" "Then it's your decision," Daniel said. "What you do with the truth is up to you." She nodded again, slower this time. "What's your fee?" "For you?" he replied. "No retainer. I take 20% of whatever we retrieve or protect." A thin, sharp smile crossed his lips. "Think of it as a professional courtesy for an old acquaintance." She stared at him. "Why help me? After everything?" He held her gaze for a moment too long. He remembered the laughter, the silence from people who should have spoken up. The nights spent staring at the ceiling, realizing he had loved someone who never loved him back. And now here she was, walking into the same trap he'd once been caught in. Because now, he said quietly, you know what it feels like. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Maybe that truth in itself was justice enough. Lisa walked out with a signed agreement and a checklist of what Daniel needed next. He watched her go, saying nothing. Then he turned back to his desk, where a new file sat waiting. Another shattered relationship. Another client looking to reclaim power. And Daniel Carter would help them do exactly that. Daniel Carter's operation was booming. Misfortune, it appeared, came with a lucrative price tag. He'd perfected the craft of converting heartbreak into neatly organized financial leverage. Another vibration rattled his desk, yet another desperate voice on the line. A fresh story of infidelity, of vows broken and affection curdled into resentment. Daniel spoke with practiced calm, his mind already working ahead, parsing the caller's emotions into actionable steps and legal maneuvers. Beyond the tall windows of his industrial office, the city churned with secrets, unspoken affairs, quiet betrayals, all waiting to be dragged into daylight. Within the steel and concrete bones of his converted warehouse, Daniel constructed airtight cases with the focus of a technician, each statement, video, and clause slotted together like parts in a controlled detonation. He'd given up on the fantasy that decency guaranteed results. But what he'd found instead was far more rewarding. Those who watched, who documented, who brought in expert counsel, they didn't just survive. They finished on top. And often, they left with a check.